me, my name is Connie, and if you're new to my channel, I'd like to welcome you. And if you are new, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know how you found out about my channel, and let me know a little about yourself so I can start to get to know you better. And I have some good news. Frank was able to fix my camera last night. He fixed the viewfinder, it's working. And at first I was a little concerned because a lot of times when Frank takes things apart, they don't go back together properly. And I didn't know if we were going to make things worse for my camera. But luckily he fixed it and it's all good now. It's working. And another thing I want to mention too, I'm going to start filming my readings of the circular staircase in my normal filming spot like I'm at today. It eats up too much of my StreamYard hours, and I really need those hours for when I go live. And I'm a little disappointed because I like having the spiral staircase in the background. I found it gave it that factor, but like I said, we'll be filming here for these videos. So, today I'm going to be reading chapter 2, and it's called A Link Cuff Button. Liddy's knees seemed to give away under her. Without a sound, she sank down, leaving me staring out the window in petrified amazement. Liddy began to moan under her breath, and in my excitement, I reached down and shook her. "Stop it," I whispered. "It's only a woman, maybe a maid of the Armstrongs. Get up and help me find the door." She groaned again. "Very well," I said. "Then I'll have to leave you here. I'm going." She moved at that, and holding to my sleeve, we felt our way with numerous collisions to the billiard room, and from there to the drawing room. The lights came on then, and with the long French windows unshuttered, I had a creepy feeling that each one sheltered a peering face. In fact, in the light of what happened afterwards, I am pretty certain we were under surveillance. During the entire ghostly evening, we hurried over the rest of the locking up and got upstairs as quickly as we could. I left the lights all on, and our footsteps echoed cavernously. Liddy had a stiff neck the next morning from looking back over her shoulder, and she refused to go to bed. "Let me stay in your dressing room, Miss Rachel," she begged. "If you don't, I'll sit in the hall outside the door. I'm never going to be murdered. I'm not going to be murdered with my eyes shut." "If you're going to be murdered," I retorted, "it won't make any difference whether they are shut or open, but you may stay in the dressing room if you will lie on the couch when you sleep in a chair. You snore." She was too foregone to be indignant, but after a while she came to the door and looked in to where I was composing myself for sleep with Drummond's Spiritual Life. "That wasn't a woman, Miss Rachel," she said, with her shoes in her hand. "It was a man in a long coat." "What woman was a man?" I discouraged her without looking up, and she went back to the couch. It was 11 o'clock when I finally prepared for bed. In spite of my assumption of indifference, I locked the door into the hall, and finding the transom did not catch, I put a chair cautiously before the door. It was not necessary to rouse Liddy, and climbing up, put on the ledge of the transom a small dressing mirror, so that any movement of the frame would send it crashing down. Then, secure in my precautions, I went to bed. I did not go to sleep at once. Liddy disturbed me just as I was growing drowsy by coming in and peering under the bed. She was afraid to speak, however, because of her previous snubbing, and went back, stopping in the doorway to sigh dismally. Somewhere downstairs, a clock with a chime sang away the hours: 11:30, 45, 12, and then the lights went out to stay. The Casanova Electric Company shuts up shop and goes home to bed at midnight. When one has a party, I believe it is customary to feed the company, which will drink hot coffee and keep awake a couple of hours longer. But the lights were gone for good that night. Liddy had gone to sleep, as I knew she would. She was a very unreliable person, always awake and ready to talk when she wasn't wanted, and dozing off to sleep when she was. I called her once or twice, the only result being an explosive snore that threatened her very windpipe. Then I got up and lighted a bedroom candle. My bedroom and dressing room were above the big living room on the first floor. On the second floor was a long corridor ran the length of the house, with rooms opening from both sides. In the wings were small corridors crossing the main one. The plan was simplicity itself, and just as I got back into bed, I heard a sound from the east wing. Apparently that made me stop, frozen, with one bedroom slipper half off, and listen. It was a rattling metallic sound, and it reverberated along the empty halls like the crash of doom. It was for all the world as if something heavy, perhaps a piece of steel, had rolled, clattering and jangling down the hardwood stairs leading to the courtroom. In the silence that followed, Liddy stirred and snored again. I was exasperated. First she kept me awake by silly alarms, then when she was needed, she slept like Joe Jefferson or Rip. They are always the same to me. I went in and aroused her, and I gave her credit for being wide awake the minute I spoke. "Get up," I said, "if you don't want to be murdered in your bed." "Where? How?" she yelled vociferously and jumped up. "There's someone in the house," I said. "Get up, we'll have to get to the telephone." "Not out in the hall," she gasped. "Oh, Miss Rachel, not out in the hall," trying to hold me back. But I am a large woman and Liddy is small. We got to the door somehow, and Liddy held a brass enduran, which it was all she could do to lift, let alone brain anybody with. I listened, and hearing nothing, opened the door a little and peered into the hall. It was a black void, full of terrible suggestion, and my candle only emphasized the gloom. Liddy squealed and drew me back again, and as the door slammed, the mirror I had put on the transom came down and hit her on the head. That completed our demoralization. It was some time before I could persuade her she had not been attacked from behind by a burglar, and when she found the mirror smashed on the floor, she wasn't much better. "There's going to be a death," she wailed. "Oh, Miss Rachel, there's going to be a death." "There will be," I said grimly, "if you don't keep quiet, Liddy Allen." And so we sat there until morning, wondering if the candle would last until dawn, and arranging what trains we could take back to town. If we had only stuck to that decision and gone back before it was too late. The sun came finally, and from my window I watched the trees along the drive take shadowy form, gradually lose their ghost-like appearance, become gray and then green. The Greenwood Club showed itself a dab of white against the hill across the valley, and an early robin or two hopped around in the dew. Not until the milk boy and the sun came about the same time did I dare to open the door into the hall and look around. Everything was as we had left it. Trunks were heaped here and there, ready for the trunk room, and through an end window of stained glass came a streak of red and yellow daylight that was eminently cheerful. The milk boy was pounding somewhere below, and the day had begun. Thomas Johnson came ambling up the drive about 6:30, and we could hear him clattering around on the lower floor, opening shutters. I had to take Liddy to our room upstairs. However, she was quite sure she would find something uncanny. In fact, when she did not, having now the courage of daylight, she was actually disappointed. Well, we did not go back to town that day. The discovery of a small picture fallen from the wall of the drawing room was quite sufficient to satisfy Liddy that the alarm had been a false one, but I was anything but convinced. Allowing for my nerves and the fact that small noises magnified themselves at night, there was still no possibility that the picture had made the series of sounds I heard. To prove it, however, I dropped it again. It fell with a single muffled crash of its wooden frame and incidentally ruined itself beyond repair. I justified myself by reflecting that if the Armstrongs chose to leave pictures in unsafe positions and to rent a house with a family ghost, the destruction of property was their responsibility, not mine. I warned Liddy not to mention what had happened to anybody, and telephoned to town for servants. Then after a breakfast, which did more credit to Thomas heart than his head, I went on a short tour of investigation. The sounds that had come from the east wing, and not without some qualms, I began there. At first I found nothing. Since then I have developed my powers of observation, but at that time I was a novice. The small cord room seemed undisturbed. I looked for footprints, which is, I believe, the conventional thing to do. Although my experience has been that as clues, both footprints and thumb marks are more useful in fiction than in fact. But the stairs in that wing offered something. At the top of the flight had been placed a tall wicker hamper, packed with the linen that had come from town. It stood at the edge of the top step, almost bearing passage, and on the step below it was a long, fresh scratch. For 3 steps the scratch was repeated, gradually diminishing as if some object had fallen, striking each one. Then, for 4 steps, nothing. On the 5th step below was a round dent in the hardwood. That was all, and it seemed little enough, except that I was positive the marks had not been there the day before. It bore out my theory of the sound, which had been, for all the world, like the bumping of a metallic object down a flight of steps. The 4 steps had been skipped. I reasoned that an iron bore, for instance, would do something of the sort. Strike 2 or 3 steps in down, then turn over, jumping a few stairs and landing with a thud. Iron bores, however, do not fall downstairs in the middle of the night alone. Coupled with the figure on the veranda, the agency by which it climbed might be assumed. But here was the thing that puzzled me most. The doors were all fastened that morning, the windows unmolested, and the particular door from the cord room to the veranda had a combination lock, of which I held the key, and which had not been tampered with. I fixed on an attempt at burglary as the most natural explanation, an attempt frustrated by the falling of the object, whatever it was that had roused me. 2 things I could not understand: how the intruder had escaped with everything locked, and why he had left the small silver which, in the absence of a butler, had remained downstairs overnight. Under pretext of learning more about the place, Thomas Johnson led me through the house and the cellars, without result. Everything was in good order and repair. Money had been spent lavishly on construction and plumbing. The house was full of conveniences, and I had no reason to repent my bargain, save the fact that in the nature of things, night must come again, and other nights must follow, and we were a long way from a police station. In the afternoon, a hack came up from Casanova with a fresh relay of servants. The driver took them with a flourish to the servants' entrance and drove around to the front of the house, where I was awaiting him. $2, he said in reply to my question. I don't charge full rates, because bringing them all up all summer as I do, it pays to make a special price. When they got off the train, I said, there's another bunch for Sunnyside. Cook, parlor, maid, and all. Yes, ma'am. 6 summers, and a new lot never less than once a month. They won't stand for the country and the lonesomeness, I reckon. But with the presence of the bunch of my servants, my courage revived, and late in the afternoon came a message from Gertrude that she and Hasley would arrive that night at around 11 o'clock, coming in the car from Richfield. Things were looking up, and when Beulah, my cat, a most intelligent animal, found some early catnip on a bank near the house and rolled in it in a feline ecstasy, I decided that getting back to nature was the thing to do. While I was dressing for dinner, Liddy rapped at the door. She was hardly herself yet, but privately I think she was worrying about the broken mirror and its augury. More than anything else, when she came in, she was holding something in her hand, and she laid it on the dressing table carefully. I found it in the linen hamper, she said. It must be Mr. Hasley's, but it seems queer how it got there. It was the half of a link cuff bottom of unique design, and I looked at it carefully. Where was it? In the bottom of the hamper, I asked. On the very top, she replied. It's a mercy it didn't fall out on the way. When Liddy had gone, I examined the fragment attentively. I had never seen it before, and I was certain it was not Hasley's. It was of Italian workmanship, and consisted of a mother of pearl foundation, encrusted with tiny seed pearls strung on horsehair to hold them. In the center was a small ruby. The trinket was odd enough, but not instinctively of great value. Its interest for me lay in this. Liddy had found it lying in the top of the hamper, which had blocked the east wing stairs. That afternoon, the Armstrongs' housekeeper, a youngish, good-looking woman, applied for Mrs. Ralston's place, and I was glad enough to take her. She looked as though she might be equal to a dozen of Liddy, with her snapping black eyes and heavy jaw. Her name was Ann Watson, and I dined that evening for the first time in 3 days. So that is the end of Chapter 2. I hope y'all enjoyed today's reading, and I hope everyone is having a fabulous Yorny day. Be the light, and bye!